Hello, dear friends. We're sincerely glad to welcome you again, and today we'll talk to the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, we discussed with you that when a person follows the spiritual path, the system can create a lot of problems, obstacles, and temptations around him. And of course, in this respect, very often, after the ups and this period of rising, there is a period of decline. But it is very joyful that people still get up and climb up in spite of everything. And you know, everyone certainly has their own path. A route can be winding sometimes, and the path to God sometimes can be both thorny and difficult. But today I would like to discuss with you the following interesting point, because on the one hand, guys hear consciousness telling them it's hard for you as long as you are, let's say, at the bottom of the mountain, but as soon as you become more spiritual, super spiritual, the situation will certainly change drastically, and there will probably be less temptations, no more than one or two, or your path and your way to God will be much easier. However, on the other hand, when we read scriptures and stories by Holy Church Fathers, we find the following points. For example, for as long as you are drawing near the city of God, this will be a sign for you, the strength of the temptations that you encounter. And of course, a question arises: does the intensity of these temptations actually increase as a person comes closer to God, or vice versa? Will it become easier? Can we rely on this sign on the spiritual path?
You should not. My friends, you should not rely on any signs. You should simply live. That is the most, let's say, solid platform as it turns out. When we rely on something and expect something, of course we may get it, but it may be false. A simple example. A person follows the spiritual path and he hopes that the more spiritual he becomes, and what is meant here by more spiritual? To comply with rituals? Or to really gain God's love? In other words, how to understand that? After all, the spiritual path is perceived differently. For some people, it is fulfillment of all written rules, total compliance, while for others, it is inner work. And which way is the right one? Some will say, it's both, there should be one and the other. Okay, a simple question. What leads to God? And is God a material structure, familiar to us in three-dimensionality, or not? Each person understands, feels, and says no, right? Because any matter is mortal, while the spiritual world is eternal. There can be no death there, so there can be no matter there. Hence, what does rituality have to do with that? Right?
I recalled the Prophet Muhammad's meeting with Bedouins, who said, "We have already believed." And he said, "No, you haven't believed yet.
Right.
You have submitted, but you will become true believers when faith enters deep into your heart."
And there is great wisdom in his words. To submit implies self-discipline, perhaps, even some kind of rituality. But again, this rituality can be aimed at compliance with some rules. Every nation has its own traditions, and following them is important to that nation. Maybe, I'm not arguing, but it has nothing to do with the spiritual. Again, with morality, maybe. With traditions, maybe, but not with the spiritual. And here it turns out, if a person approaches the spiritual world, what is that manifested in? It's no problem for him to get up with the proper food, to put on proper slippers and proper trousers, I don't know, to follow all the written rules, to dress, walk or speak right, to be polite with everyone. But the question is, does the attitude towards people come from within? Because sometimes, I will explain it this way, sometimes when a person needs help, we help him. We help him from the heart, or out of decency because it is written to do so. And that's the difference. It's one thing if someone needs help, and we give them that help. If we do it just because it is customary, without any inner desire and aspiration, is it a spiritual action or not?
Just a humane one.
Absolutely right. This is a normal human action, right? But if we do it with an inner message, that is, we try to help spiritually and at the same time financially,
Taking care of the personality of this human,
taking care of the personality of this human, right? That is,
to
we
strengthen his position.
absolutely right. We relieve his problems which distract the person, which do not allow him to concentrate on the spiritual, the problems Shaitan manipulates him with, right? So we render him a spiritual service, don't we? In fact, this is so. And just look, the action is one, but the approach is different.
Yes, exactly.
And it all depends on your attitude, right?
What you are filled with inside at the moment when you do that.
Of course. And here again, a person is walking, that's where we started. He's following the spiritual path, and he expects that it will be easier, easier, and easier for him. That is, there will be less influence on him from...
Less pressure from the system, yes.
Of course, less pressure from the system. Demons will bother him less. Everything in his life will work out. Easier and better. A question. In which life? If he follows the spiritual path in order to solve his material problems in this world, then he is going the wrong way, and he will come to the wrong place. Why? Because his circumstances will really begin to improve. He will become calmer. He will have fewer negative emotions and fewer reasons for negative emotions. But can that be detrimental to him, so to say? It can. Why? Because it may actually be the tricks of Shaitan. Or it may be the result of the person's intellectual work. In other words, he curbed his consciousness and was able to build his life in such a way that he became more rational, less irritable, began to understand more.
He's not prone to conflict.
Absolutely right. He himself stopped being prone to conflict because he understands that there is nothing good in quarrels and irritations, right? He has become less nervous about small things, and his life has already become better. Is this a sign of the person's spiritual growth?
Oh, that's an acute question.
A good question, right? And how to understand that the higher we climb the mountain, the less temptations we have.
The less stress from the system.
The less stress from the system,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
But what can this be manifested in? And here again, we are all different, friends, and each of us perceives this world in our own way. A simple example. A person gets up in the morning, okay? Some people have a habit of washing or something else than eating and drinking tea, while others have a habit of going for a run. Still others have a habit of smoking a cigarette. Right?
Right.
Which of these actions is spiritual? None of them. Many will say, I get up and I should pray. Good. How is prayer different from saying hello to your loved ones? From wishing them a good morning?
In general, how sincere the motive will be, right?
Absolutely right. You take care of people, that is,
It's a manifestation of sincerity.
just to see if all near and dear ones are fine. If you live in the same house, to wish them good morning, maybe someone needs some help, that is, to show real concern for people. Is that spiritual or not spiritual?
It's very spiritual.
It is spiritual. A prayer where you light a bunch of candles, some incense, tie yourself in a knot or something else. Everyone belongs to a different religion. In yoga, you may stand on your head or do something else, chant some mantra, but at that you ask for something material. That is, to have a good day today, right? I wish to make some money today, I wish I don't have a headache, or to succeed in something. Is that a spiritual prayer? Does it do any good?
There is a hidden motive to receive a benefit.
Absolutely right. Who will respond to this motive? God. Will He even hear you in such a sense or not? And look how we started with a simple example, right?
Yes, right.
Will there be a lot of temptations? And there it starts.
Yes, they're in every step, in every action.
Naturally, if we react to them,
Yes, sure.
if that something means a lot for us, that which we spend our life and time on, that something on which we spend, I'll put it this way, the time for which we could gain eternal life, if this very something is much more important for us, that's already something different, completely different, and it has nothing to do with the spiritual path, although this may be religious.
There is also the following point, Igor Mikhailovich. Many people understand that one has to fight for the inner life, that spiritual development is the path of the true warrior.
Yes, of course.
That one has to defend one's position against the system, sort of
By all
to
means.
defend oneself and one's life, so to say. And of course, in all this, people very often move from the state of internal dialogue with the spiritual world to such a position of a fighter, so to say.
Not only a fighter, but quite often people also enter into a dialogue, into philosophizing with themselves about the spiritual aspects and their own life, you see. I mean, in a struggle. That is, we are ready to fight Satan, we are ready to fight our weeds inside. We, as you say, have already taken a crouched stance.
We're in such a stance, right?
Yes, we are already prepared to battle, right? But here's a simple question. What for? Whom are you going to fight, my friend? What is a demon? Does he exist in the material world? No, he does not. And yet, adrenaline is already produced in you to fight against him. What is meant by him? Isn't that so? Or we enter into a dialogue. That is, we are ready to defend the position of our spiritual path. We feel that we are not just two-legged monkeys, we are human beings. We feel that, yes, this world is ours, but it is temporary. Whereas there is something greater, and we understand that this world was not created for people to exist in it just like that, hating each other, killing each other, well, and sometimes loving each other. So we understand that our life does not end with this temporary state, that life is not the same as a dream. We understand that beyond this material world, there is something else, right? And here it turns out that when a person enters into a dialogue with oneself and defends, who is talking to whom and where is the person at this time?
As personality, right?
Simply as personality. Well, haven't you all experienced that?
Yes, sure.
When we feel that consciousness starts to resent someone or hate something or tells you that it's all nonsense, you're wasting time, you could have spent it, I don't know, on watching a movie or digging up the garden or doing some other good work. Isn't that so? While you engage in spirituality, you sit in some practices, perform prayers, whatever, or yoga, and look for the spiritual path, right?
Do something useful, yes, exactly.
Do something useful, right? It's useful after all. Let's say, if you plant cucumbers or potatoes, you can eat them later on, right? But what will you get from your yoga later on? Or from your prayer, since you're not asking God for anything material in it, that the cucumbers would sprout properly? What's the point? This is rational after all.
Why you're so spiritual yet so poor,
Of
right?
course, consciousness speaks using arguments, right?
Yes, exactly.
Who hasn't encountered that? Here we try to counter-argue that there are spiritual things, there's something different. What do I need cucumbers for if I'm going to end up in hell? You'll end up in hell later, but you want cucumbers today, right?
Yes, exactly.
So if you don't plant them today, tomorrow they won't grow. Just look how simple everything is on the one hand. Consciousness always talks quite logically too, correctly and beautifully, and discourages a person from the spiritual path by means of temptations, very skillfully as well.
It makes one choose extremes.
And gives some prospect. Of course, sometimes a person even has to weigh something, sort of, okay, I'll do it later, right now I have a job, a good earning, or something else, whatever, for example, even to help someone, relatives or loved ones. How's that? I need to go and help a person, I don't know, to glue the wallpaper at his place while I will sit here and pray, or do yoga, or something else, right? Isn't that how it happens?
It turns out that yes, this is what it actually says. Such is this voice.
Oh, what nonsense one may hear.
Igor Mikhailovich, what is true belligerence? How to understand this, that spiritual development is actually the path of a warrior? What is our belligerence on this path all about?
In its true understanding, I'll put it this way, the spiritual development of a human is not the path of a warrior. That's firstly. A warrior means resistance and destruction of someone, right? That is, a person is already determined to destroy someone intentionally. Service is the path of a warrior, but that's service. It's a different thing. Whereas the spiritual path, it is the path if we look at it honestly and call things by their proper names, is the path of joy, love, and bliss. There's no other way to call it. All these resistances, all these absurdities from consciousness, all these attempts to expect that later on it will become easier for you. In what? Let's say if you haven't got rid of Satan today, what makes you think that it will be easier for you tomorrow? A simple question. If today he hooks you, I don't know, on some candy, on something shiny and beautiful, and it is more important for you, if there is at least anything more valuable for you in this world than God's love, then you will lose. You will always be seduced. You will always be distracted. Isn't that so?
Yes, right.
Whereas the spiritual path, first of all, implies understanding. It's a goal. If a person has a goal to get to the top of the mountain, and no matter what, he simply goes there. Yes, he might not see all the beauty around. He might not see how beautiful other mountains are, what beautiful birds fly around or clouds float. He might not see some rocks or unusual pebbles under his feet. Why? Because he is going towards the goal. All this external beauty is not the goal, right?
Yes, exactly.
But if our goal is to ascend to the mountain in order to admire the beauty around, then excuse me, how will you get rid of it? You will get stuck on the first stone or on the first bird, and you will consider what you associate clouds with, like those games in childhood.
Yes, exactly.
What does a cloud look like? This way you might never reach the peak. That's the answer. Does it become easier for a person when he approaches the mountain peak or not?
It does, if he is in love and doesn't lose sight of the goal.
Of course, everything is simple in fact. Yes, consciousness torments all of us. We all have problems from time to time. We live in the material world and we talk to each other all the time. Even during a simple conversation, we can evoke various emotions in each other. Why? This is normal. It's our body. If a simple command comes from consciousness, a command lemon, what happens in us?
Saliva is certainly secreted.
Yes, we immediately imagine this
Image.
yellow fruit, then its taste, and saliva is secreted. This is physiology, this is normal, it's our reaction to the image, right? We actually communicate through images. Again, we perceive this whole world through images, and these very images are formed into some kind of, I don't know, mosaic that creates a picture of our life. Isn't that so?
Yes, sure.
Naturally, we get filled with emotions and whatnot. However, if we live without God's love, this is exactly the goal of our existence, and then God is a game for us. But when, on the contrary, you live by God's love, my friend, when there is nothing more important than God's love for you, when you really strive for the spiritual world, when you live a full life as personality and you are free, then this life becomes a game for you. And that's the point. Then you understand and see any tricks from Satan. Will they disturb you? They will if you pay attention to them. But if your attention is invested in communion with the spiritual world, when you have already reached this point, at the initial steps, of course, I agree, until a person experiences God's love. But he feels that it is necessary. There are moments when consciousness is strong and it distracts, but anyway, if your goal is the peak, the spiritual world, you won't be distracted that much anyway. And you will not worry and be nervous about trifles. Even if you fall, you just get up and go. That's the point. But when indeed, as in the voiced question, you're already approaching the point where you feel God's love, when not only you send it but already receive a response, then everything changes. Then a person, I don't know, there is nothing to compare it with in this material world. There is really nothing. It's when every moment is bliss. It is really something that you are unwilling to part and cannot part with. It is difficult to express this in words. It is better to feel it and not to lose it. Is it possible to lose it? It is possible. Even this can be lost. Until a human becomes a part of the spiritual world, he can certainly be tempted. And there have been many cases like that. Again, pridefulness, selfishness, distractions. A person stumbled, fell, and didn't notice how he rolled down to the very bottom, right? Do such situations happen? They do, friends. Unfortunately, they do. Therefore, the path, I won't say it is complicated. It is simply the path. The best thing is when a person really revels in God's love, even if he doesn't receive a response yet, but he feels that there is the spiritual world and he tries to break through to it with his entire essence. He sends attention and the power of his love to the spiritual world, and this is no longer a game for him, but indeed life. Then it's already a lot. And if he enjoys this process, and this is his goal, then everything else fades and becomes not as strong as it was before. That's what is important, to weaken Satan, to weaken his power over personality, over a human as personality. In order to do that, yes, there are various techniques. We shared them as well, and again, they have existed from time immemorial. Prayers, mantras, and that very yoga. It can all help a person on the spiritual path. However, none of the above mentioned is the path itself. The path itself is the goal and love. When you accumulate this love, or even give it at the first steps, but you feel this goal, you understand and live by it, that's when it's the path, while everything else is an addition on the path. Yet on the other hand, it's good that a person has some distractions too. I can even say that it's good that people sometimes fall. Then there is something to compare. When you fall and wallow in this materialism, you understand this very anguish as well as the pointlessness and finiteness of it all. Then you value God's love even more. For some people this is important, because without that kind of comparison, it is difficult for them to understand, it is difficult to curb their consciousness that is actually trying to seduce them and seize power over them. Since for consciousness it is life, it is the future of that very consciousness. But when a person himself gains life, that's destructive to consciousness. That's why it struggles. It struggles for survival. But if consciousness struggles for survival, then there is a simple question. Why doesn't a person struggle? Right?
Right. We should remember that the system and the devil are also sort of our training device. Indeed, any kind of trials, obstacles,
Of course.
and temptations in life are merely intended for separating a good grain from the chaff.
That's exactly the point. Again, for some people, even a struggle is important at initial stages. It's important because a person should learn to compare his inner states. When he's in a struggle, when he's in peace, and when he's in love, in order to choose what is important for him, in order to feel, at least to feel that this world is not the way it is. After all, it is very difficult for many people to even understand that there is another world. Consciousness, I would say, has overcome a person so much that he perceives only this three-dimensionality, and he perceives the spiritual world again, like in religious fairy tales.
Pragmatically or rationally.
Absolutely, that he will be in a body the same as he is now, with arms and legs, but he'll be in good conditions and he won't get sick there, he won't age and will exist forever. He really perceives it this way. It's just that when a person doesn't have an understanding, when he doesn't have a skill of living, it is easy for him to get lost. Everything is very simple. But when a person has a goal and has love, everything changes. Because the path as such, I mean the spiritual path, is a pleasure and joy, experienced every moment. Sometimes, It is even a pity to sleep, as they say. You understand that your body needs it, and that's the only thing forcing you to sleep. But this actually means you have to fall asleep and lose time. It's a time when you sort of do not communicate so actively and you are not in that bliss. So any practice and any prayer, when it is filled with bliss, well, this is something completely different. Even that very yoga, whatever, that's the point. But when there is no love, when there is pain and suffering, is this really life?
Therefore, for those who think that the spiritual path is actually an intense struggle, it would probably be right to relax and dissolve in God's love.
It's not always possible. You see, it's already when a person has mastered this practice, when he has, I would say, when he has reciprocal love, when he really lives by it, he can dissolve. But when he has a bunch of problems, when Satan is strong, a person cannot dissolve. In this case, sometimes people have to fight, to argue and to prove something. Again, at Satan's instigation. As a matter of fact, any fight means strengthening the demon. That's why it is more correct not to fight, but to love God. You can fight Satan all your life and just remain in the fight with him. While it is better to actually love God, then you will remain with God, right?
Right.
So, my friends, let's start with a simple thing. Let's just love each other. That's the best thing that can be. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, friends. Peace be with you.